I'm Kelly Albrecht. I'm with Last Call Media, and most of the previous versions of this talk have been given as kind of a disruptive DevOps talk, which explains and extends a wider understanding of the DevOps mindset to lead us into a strategy of customer empathy and building features that are more geared to our customers, automating and streamlining the building of those features and the gathering of the feedback from what we're building. I've cut a bit of that out of there because since I started giving this talk, our team actually started executing this strategy with some of our clients, and one of the biggest ones most recently has been mass.gov, and we've been able to implement a lot of these strategies in a very full and visually impressive way. So I actually have a live demo of some of that work, and on this introductory slide you can see it has Colin Panetta and Jamie Johnson. So the most recent time we gave this talk, Colin Panetta is the director of UX UI at Last Call Media, talked about his parts in implementing some of the strategies, and Jamie, who's a developer with Last Call Media, talked about his parts. So I'm going to try to cover both of their parts. And bear with me, I may just read some of their stuff. All right. So if you think about your customer, who might represent your customer in your work? You probably all have different types of customers, kind of depending on what you do. Does somebody want to offer kind of the arrangement of who they might consider their customer to be?
I am the customer.
You're the customer. So you're hoping that people are getting closer to you and building more of what you want. So that's an excellent perspective. Anybody else want to offer?
My editors.
Your editors.
Yes.
So you're very concerned with the authoring experience. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
If they don't use it, what am I doing?
Great. And you're building it for them.
Uh-huh.
And how close are you to your customers? Do you feel you interact with them? Is there a project manager between you and them? No, it's very close.
Me and them.
That's great. What are some of the benefits to that?
The benefits to them, they can ask for new features all the freaking time.
Yeah.
The disadvantages is they can ask for features all the freaking time.
More to manage. It's certainly more to manage. I don't think we'll cover it too much, but there are ways to think about your work and ways to think about how to minimize the disruption and maximize the feedback. So a lot of people might have they might be on a development team. It could be a more older-fashioned workflow where they may have an operations team in front of them and a product team in front of that, and maybe a customer service team in front of that. So a lot of us have still or have in the past worked in a situation where we were very far from our customers. In a lot of ways, you can look at it this way, and here's where this DevOps idea kind of comes from, where if you're trying to get a product into operation, you have the development team of that product, kind of in a sense, in the past they were throwing it over the wall to the people who were putting it into operation, and this became known as the wall of confusion, where things went wrong and blame and finger pointing started happening. So the DevOps movement started from trying to break down that wall of confusion and work together to build a better product and get a better product into operation, and started to think about how might you do that. And one of the ways that you would do that is to streamline and automate anything that could go wrong and remove those potential things that would lead to finger pointing. That's led to automate all the things. The core DevOps philosophy is to automate everything, and it's even gone so far as to consider automating the entire operations team, and you might see #NoOps if you look into this. Really, I think though, the whole idea, if you look at as long as this feedback loop could be and is in some instances, DevOps is really about shortening this whole entire feedback loop and getting everybody working together. So it's a bigger idea than just automating everything and automating people out of the picture. If you want to see where automating everything out of the picture leads to, there's a great Amazon Prime sci-fi series by Philip K. Dick, in which humans go out of existence, and when the products start piling up, the machines create robots to consume the products. And that's kind of an example of what automating everything leads to. Where what we really want is to build the right product for our customers and work together to do that as good, as well as possible. And really what we want to get is more like what was described just recently in the audience as being very close to the customer, where you really know what they want, and you know right away if you're building something they don't want, and you can stay on track and not go in the wrong direction for too much amount of time at all. So thinking in this way, you start to think more in terms of the feedback loop and looking for ways to smush things together in real efficient ways, and thinking about what you're planning to build, what you're building, what you're integrating together and deploying. And this yellow area is the thing in operation, and you want to let your customers know what new stuff you're deploying. You want to let them know what they are operating and how to use it, so that when you ask them how's it going in the feedback aspect of things, you're getting good information back rather than mostly user error reports, which happens if you're not educating your customers well enough. And all of that is what leads into the planning of new features. So knowing what you need to build next is only going to be as good as the feedback that you're getting and the sort of monitoring of customer satisfaction that you're able to do. So it all feeds into a big chain where ultimately you're trying to satisfy your customers and build the right things. So here's that with how you can think about how do you act on these aspects of this other half of what can be considered a DevOps loop. We're great at building and continuously integrating and deploying. 9 out of 10 DevOps talks are going to be about that half of the loop. But how do you think about automating and streamlining the other half of it, letting your customers know about what's new, letting them know what they are operating, finding out how they like it, and feeding that all into planning what's next. So if we're using Drupal, as most of us at this camp are, Drupal really becomes the point of the relationship. This is the point, the natural point where you're going to have your first opportunity to let the customer know what's new, to let them know what it is they're using and how to use it best, to find out if they like it and find out what might improve the product, and feed all that into planning. So there's as most of us here know, Drupal is incredibly powerful and can do a lot more than it comes out of the box doing. And so thinking this way leads to a lot of interesting work. So at this point, if everybody could have come to Asheville, it would have been a lot of fun, but Colin's not here. So Colin Panetta is the director of UX and UI for Last Call Media, and he's on the mass.gov project. And one of the big things they're into at mass.gov is collecting feedback at every turn. And not too long ago, they were collecting a lot of feedback like this, where users were requesting the ability to move the authoring content into the hands of the actual subject matter experts instead of keeping it in the hands of web experts or technical folks as the old system, which they had just moved out of and into Drupal. One of the major points for moving into Drupal was to hopefully achieve this goal. So ease of use became very important to fulfilling that objective, right? The system needs to make sense to the users, as many WordPress aficionados will say is true of their system. It needs to make sense to them, needs to seem reliable to them, so that they feel like they can use it and not have to hand off their content to people who understand it. So as soon as we got switched over to a Drupal 8 site and migrated in, very soon the next priority was to improve the authoring experience. So just looking, even though I think the irony here is that this is kind of like was a major effort, I think in Drupal 7 was to make the back end of Drupal great, and it still could use some work. So there's still room for improvement. A UX analysis would say that there's kind of an unclear page hierarchy to the back end of Drupal. There's no strong distinction between what's more important or less important. It can be unclear where specific areas begin or end. It's not super appealing. I mean, it is the look we're used to for the back end of Drupal, and it certainly was an improvement over what we were using. But there's certainly room for improvement. So the team started getting serious. Well, let's retheme the admin site. How hard could that be? Has anybody tried to retheme the back end of Drupal? It's yeah. So if you think about so our thinking of like doing the right thing and the strategy that I laid out as an introduction kind of leads you into wanting to do this, and you get to find out that it ends up being kind of hard. But first, to stick with the UX a little bit, really the approach was to keep the look and feel consistent with the new branding. So retheming the admin site allows us to create a more engaging experience for our users, our customers, and make those adjustments to heighten usability. So actually, I'll mention that there's already this concept in Mass.gov's development across all the teams that this Drupal 8 site, especially the backend, the understanding of the backend is to understand it as a product. And the people who are adding content are the customers of this product. And customers of this product are the staff of the various state departments and agencies within the state of Massachusetts. So if you're in the Department of Wildlife, it may be your responsibility to keep information on getting fishing licenses up to date. And you're going to have access to the back end of the Mass.gov website to keep that information current, to look for feedback on if the information you're putting up there could be better. And that's really part of your responsibility. And so the back end of Drupal is the product that you're using to be able to communicate with the constituents that are interested in the services that you're providing. So there's this concept of making the product, building the relationship, and part of building that relationship is to make it seem like recognizable and have an identity, a matching identity with what the main site is. So some of the strategies to keep that would be to, if you want the users to know they're in a space that's related but distinct from the main content site, we use the same fonts and colors, but we flip their usage. For example, a blue color is used for decoration on the main site, and a green color for action. This is flipped on the back end so that the blue color is used for action on the back end. We'll see some of that. Since the back end is kind of a dashboard for adding content to the main site, where the users are going to become experienced and not need. And one of the big complaints of the power users of the main site is that there's too much white space. And this is kind of like if you want the site to be more appealing, you need more white space. But they're power users and they're using the back end, so it's okay to tighten things up. They don't have to scroll too much to get to what they're looking for. They need, ideally they'll need less hand holding, and you want things to just be clear to them. Let's see, so vertical spacing was a way that this was approached. If things are unrelated, they're further apart, but if they're more related, they're closer together. So this isn't always the case. an out-of-the-box Drupal backend. As I think, maybe it's the next slide here. Let's see. I think this will play. Yeah. Oh, here's. All right. So this is some of the functionality that if you have a complex site, you're going to need to build complex functionality. And one of the things that happens in the Drupal backend is illustrated by this video. So here's a content type where they need to create lists. So it needs to be structured data that's going into it, because a lot of it needs to get reused. And they need to make lists, and all the lists are different. And the list can be pretty complicated, pulling in more content. Sometimes you're creating content as you're doing it. And I don't know if anybody's ever, this is an extreme version of this, but it's not too hard on a reasonable site that needs a reasonable amount of functionality to end up in something like this, where it's unclear after a while which section's within which other section. Has anybody had that experience in the back end of Drupal 8 where it's just like, thing starts getting pretty tall, which is within which thing? It can be super confusing. So that was something that we were dealing with. And they were using the site, a lot of this stuff like that, out of the box. And that kind of thing is overwhelming. It can lead to users making mistakes, thinking the system's not reliable. It's important to clean that up. Okay, so I'll click around this in a second. But the first, and this slide doesn't, I don't think this slide communicates it that much, but this is kind of a cleaned up first pass at cleaning up that. And one of the main things that we did was to draw these vertical lines showing which is indented, which is within which thing a little bit better. So small improvements. We'll keep going with the improvements there. And then Jamie had to actually work with the back end, retheming it. So we had these cool design ideas and aspirations, and we just threw them at development. So the state of back-end theme for Drupal 8 is not, there's not a lot out there yet. There are a few things. There's at minimal. There's material with admin, which is not quite there yet, and there's Thunder, which is specific to its own distribution. Has anybody messed around with these at all?
Still on Drupal 7.
Okay, all right. There's some things on Drupal 7. I think there's like an admin toolbar in Drupal 7. There's some modules in Drupal 8, like the admin toolbar is nice. One thing that I will point out about the admin toolbar is I think it makes it easier for site build. There's a lot of different personas you can consider when you're thinking about making the backend of Drupal easier. And the admin toolbar is certainly making it easier for a Drupal admin. And the help system is another example, I think, that's making it easier. That's making it easier for developers to add help to Drupal, but then to also give administrators and other people who might be interested in how modules are working, helping them with that. But there's not really anything out there that's considering the person or persons that actually gets what you build. It's kind of on the builder to build that help and that improved UI into Drupal, and it almost never gets done. So one of the things that this talk, I think, is concerned with is that missing piece and the hills that there are to climb if that is something that's important to your project. Okay. So awareness of this issue is growing, and there seems to be growing support within the community to make improving UX for authors and editors a priority. But this what we want to talk about here is in this next section that Jamie had to go through is just how hard it is to do this. First thing that he did was create a subtheme of 7 to implement the new designs. Developed a new and improved version of the admin toolbar, specifically for the content creators and editors, not specifically for a back-end admin. And rebuilt the custom add content page, specifically with the content creator and editor experience in mind. That's my favorite part, so we'll get to that. First thing, kind of from a technical point of view, is made a subtheme of 7, and this is for all the reasons you would do a subtheme. Inherit the parent theme's resources, and that the parent theme can be updated, and your subtheme can inherit that. The main challenges in building an administrative theme for Drupal, we can quote the maintainer of the 7th theme. The biggest problem right now is the number of modules that require different user interfaces. Some modules make minor tweaks to the UI to meet their needs, some creating their own from scratch. It's very hard for an admin theme to support all these use cases without something breaking, let alone making the UX feel cohesive. So a lot of this is touching on, if you have a lot of the paragraphs module in your backend, there's really only so much 7 can do to predict what's happening there, and to bring all that stuff into order, especially if you're retheming the whole thing. You can count on a pretty big uphill battle with that stuff. So I think that there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of what Drupal is going to make easy for people to do out of the box that there's really not much concern for right now. So pro of using a subtheme 7, it's best practice. It's right there in the README. Just read the README. There's good information in there. Helps ensure your theme won't unexpectedly break different module UIs. So some cons of using a subtheme of 7. It's really just not all the way there yet in terms of what we'd expect for theming, because it's not an everyday thing that somebody wants to retheme the back end of their site. So you get all of these kind of unexpected little issues that I think we can improve on what Drupal comes with out of the box. All right, so I'm going to jump into a little demo of what got implemented, and probably if there are any questions, I can try to answer those as we find Jamie or Colin. That didn't work. All right. Okay, so here's the back end of mass.gov. This is watched. This is just I didn't really plan like how am I going to go through this tour, but
You're already doing a good job.
yeah.
That's fine.
So so you log in. This is where we're logged into right now is like your content. Basically, if you're an author, if you're an editor of content, you're using your content management system. What the thing is to you is a place to add and edit and manage your content. And so this area here is my work and my revisions. I'm logged in as a kind of a demo user, so I haven't created any content. But you can see what this kind of thing would look like if there were more content here. So it's got a nice look to it. It's got the mass.gov green. Got some helpful things here. Let's see, but we've got these big buttons here. These are like two big things that you do. So this is, this is a software tool, and you're coming in here, so you get your ad content. It's present up here at all times. So if we go to add some content, this is you can see up here, this is the node ad. This is the add content page. So really the thinking behind this is to really help you know what it is that you're using, what your tools are, to feel supported, to feel like it's reliable, that there's that this is a feature that you're using. So one of the content types shown in one of the examples is this curated lists content type. So if we go to add one of those, this is looks nicer, looks more reliable, consistent with
Is that the same list that was in the other example?
Well, so yeah, so I can get to we can try to make it confusing if we want. Add list, do a manual one. So we've got this horizontal bar here to show that this stuff's all together. And we want to add a list item. You can kind of, it's an improvement. This is within this. So you
What does the little football do? Is that folded up?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
This is part, I think this comes from default Drupal, where things are cool if you can drag their hierarchy around, but in super tall lists, I think that really becomes not usable. So this would be, if there was one below or above, you could change it.
It's a little cross and.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know if that meant something else.
Yeah. So I think this is a major place of future improvement where you have these really tall things that you're able to change the order of them. So that could be a point of improvement. We have bigger things kind of hidden, tucked away in here. If I go back out to if I go to add different content, let's see this. So this menu is searchable. So if I wanted to add a fee comes up. It's searching the title and
And those are your content types.
These are actually category. Yeah, each one of these is a content type that you can add. Just like
In Drupal, they are behind the scenes. They're content types. You're calling them categories for the purpose of the user. Right?
No, actually, I'll show you actually. This is the services and info category. So it's got content types within it. So some people are only going to be interested in maybe news and events.
Okay.
So now we've got all the news and events right here.
Okay. So those things listed, organization, person, alert. That's content type.
Yeah, this is so the site's huge. Site has a lot of functionality, and it takes a lot of content types to do that.
That's really cool.
And since I'm in as an admin, I have access to all the content types. I think for other authors, they'd have access to fewer, but still a good number of them. Here's another cool thing that people really like. So you've got like a view a live example, and you can also tour this content type. So maybe we don't want to add it yet. Maybe we haven't used it before. We want to tour this content type. So now we're in tour mode. And I'll explain tour in a second. Actually, I'll explain tour now. Tour is in Drupal core by default. Nobody uses it. Nobody knows about it.
I just heard about it a month ago.
Yeah,
I've heard of it.
It's really, I think it's kind of the kind of thing where it was like a great idea and it got 90% of the way there and just didn't get a surge of community involvement, and that's just kind of where it's left. So there are some loose ends and some rough edges that are not crazy to clean up. We've got some patches, and we're going to keep working on this and contribute back as we go. But any page, any Drupal route that has a tour configured for it will show a link to start a tour here. But you can also link to any page with question mark tour at the end. And if there's a tour configured for that page, it'll start automatically. So that's how you can have on something like this, page, a link to tour the content type. You just linking to the node add service details question mark tour, and that triggers it right there. That also lets you do things like link to other tours from other tours. So if you had, say, basically a tour tooltip can have HTML in it. You can link to things from within them. If you want to link to another tour from within a tour tooltip, you can just link to some page that has a tour on it with question mark tour, and it'll jump right into that tour. You can also link to a tip within a tour. We're not doing that right now because that's a spot where there are some loose ends around it. Out of the box, it seems to link to just the tip, but not to the tip within a series of tips, so it can be a little confusing. So that's kind of a to-do, I think, for the whole idea. But you can. So this is a tip that's configured to show as a modal. You go next, and this one's pointing up at the title and short description. The way that it knows where to go is it targets CSS selectors, IDs or classes. So you can look.
Question: is it possible to use an image?
Yep.
As along with the tooltip?
Yeah, you can put like a GIF right in
Yeah,
there.
like if you could do like maybe like even an auto-generated screenshot.
Yep.
If the content type already exists, and then point to the title.
Yep. When I was doing the original strategy for this, I had a lot of those examples. There was a lot of brainstorming around, like should we show them what this looks like when it gets saved? In the end, though, it's my opinion that you should limit these tips to not be too big and not take up too much area of content, and link to additional content from the tip if somebody's interested, and to really focus on the tips as if you're standing over the shoulder of the person and saying, hey, up here, there's this thing, and this is important because of this, and if you want more information, you can read about that there. Or over here on the right is this interesting stuff, and actually this is I think because I'm an admin, this is kind of up there like that, but over here on the right, this is what's happening over here, is kind of how to think of the strategy, I think. And of course, at the end, you want to ask for some feedback, and this just links to a form stack form in this case, so it doesn't have to be anything too complicated. And the tour. So where that all fits into the strategy, a lot of those links that were in those tips were leading to help files. So you really want to help your authors understand what they're using and be able to use it as best they can. And so where that fits into the overall strategy is helping authors know what they're using, know what's new about what they're using. You can configure those tips just to show what's new about the content type. Another way that this whole thing fits into kind of the DevOps mindset of streamlining and automation is the tour module is configured and built with YAML files on the back end. So you can build in wanting a new tip for a feature, you can build that into your acceptance criteria. So if you submit an issue, if you're the product owner, you're submitting an issue to the development team wanting a new field on a content type, you can also say, as building this new field, here's the content for the tip. So we want a tip on this field, we want it to be part of the tour that's on this page, and they can put the field in, they can add the content for the tip to the YAML, and it's all in code, and it all deploys at the same time. And so it could even be, the tip could even be you could have a what's new tip on every tour, so that when they take the tour, what's new about this content type, and you could have your information, you can manage it that way. So you're streamlining the updating of that, what's new and what's how to use a certain piece of functionality as you're deploying it. Let's see. This is that live. This is an example. I just picked a funny one. This is an example of a live page of a service detail page, and at the bottom of it, they have feedback. It's very important to ask for feedback all the time. Yes or no. Very simple. Some feedback.
I will say when I lived in Boston, we had a bat in our house. So.
So that's real.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I picked this one, because just recently I had some bats in my family of bats. Yeah,
So you had a colony, is that what?
yeah, something went wrong in their lives, and they just had a dramatic day in my house.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, I was bitten by a bat once and had to go through the whole series of radios.
Oh.
I was sleeping in my bed with me.
Oh, wow.
I would sell the house the next day. I don't care if my ancestors built it by hand.
Yeah.
Hey, once I had the rabies shots, it could just bite me as many times. Didn't matter after that.
Oh dear.
No.
So I'm not going to, I won't go into it too much here, but all this feedback does get pulled into a feedback manager. And so I'm watching the bats in the home content type, and this is all the people that have submitted feedback, and some of the current work that's happening is tagging and automating the tagging and categorization of this feedback and processing it, because there's just so much the site is so busy, it gets so much feedback on every page that you need that initial processing step to be able to make it more manageable. But that's really all part of attempting to continuously improve the product. So this is...
Who does the feedback go to exactly?
It's FormStack, so there's an integration between FormStack, and so this is actually a main feedback page, but I think soon what's being worked on right now is to tie this back into you can go to any piece of content. So there's already some analytics stuff deploying right now, which is to the same end, but the whole idea is to give the authors of the pages the tools to know how the pages are doing to make them better. So there's analytics about the performance.
Very cool.
There's a lot of analysis of which content performs better than other content, so you can see how your content's performing, how it might perform better. You can go to this feedback tab to see people if they're finding what they're looking for or needing. So it's really all these tools to build this awareness so that you can react and improve as quickly as possible. And so that's really building, trying to find ways to build better tools for the customers, essentially, so that they can do a better job and deliver better content to the constituents of the state.
Okay, so for this particular content piece, bats, this feedback is both aggregated and made available to the content manager for that particular piece. Is that what you're saying, or is that the next step?
Right now, if I were watching more content types, the only one I'm watching for this example is bats in the home. But if I were watching more, they'd all be piled up in here. So this has kind of been this isn't like finished or deployed yet, but that's where it's going. And I don't think I have a copy of. I don't think I have anything. Yeah. Well, there's this other thing, but it's all to try to improve the product with the customer in mind, and they are also very focused on gathering feedback from the customer, the author. I think at the bottom here, they're looking for feedback at every chance. They reach out directly and really process all of this feedback and organize this feedback, and that's what feeds into the next things that get built. Eventually, I think the thinking is that your customers, once you get all of your big ideas developed, you'll still have some big ideas along the way, but a lot of your backlog should be driven by your customer base.
So who comes up with the text like this? The organization will be displayed at the top of the Is that
That's
something
a-
you guys do?
No, yeah, I'm glad that you pointed it out.
Because it's well written. I mean,
Yep,
it's just.
yep,
It's very nice.
it's all part of the effort for caring about your customer and so that they know what they're using. And so there's a whole help text effort to build help text into and every Drupal field has help text on it. You can put HTML in there. You can intro into what the field is for, but then also link to a document that may be more involved about the strategy of this content type in general and where the field fits in. Something that might be interesting to look at actually is, so we've got the content types here. The one that I put a tour link on is service details. So this is some customization that we did. Oh, I don't know if I did the wrong one. Service. Yeah, so we've fielded these content types. So use this content type for. So this is kind of configuring the content type. Here's the link to the live example. I added this link in right here, and it's just basically node add service details tour. That's how I got that link in there. I think it could be. The original plan was I think it would be more of a structured way. Like the content type can know if it has a tour, so you can automate that. You could also automate the live link as well, but one step at a time.
So again, who's authoring that text? Is that your team does, or is that something the mass people they're
doing
end
it.
users are doing that?
Yeah, they have a content team. Yeah. So it's all. I mean, it's
I need one of those.
multiple teams, and yeah, that's one of the tricky things. I think the only way you can really have a shot at it is to do it as you're building the whole thing. So if you're adding a field, just have it in the mindset like here, just put a couple sentences in. And that's the thing too. Like if you put a couple sentences, so like I don't think I have time for it, but I do have slides that I could breeze through where I've got this idea that we're working on at last call where basically the idea is if you put a couple of sentences in with every field, then you can pull all of that help text in automatically and automatically generate help pages for the content types where it's just laid out like here's your quick little blurb about what the content type's about, here's all those sentences for every field, here's a little blurb about the conclusion.
Right. And once you have that content, then you can do a lot with it. I can't get anybody to author that stuff.
Right. You need to create it as you go, and if you can imagine, so it's hard if you're a very small team, but you can imagine if you're a larger team and the product owner is responsible for the features and they care about the help text for the feature. You streamline it all in, and it just all deploys out.
You said the word care a number of times, and I think that's very significant.
Yeah. It's
somebody cares about the way this looks and the words that are here. That's fantastic.
So let me see. So I'll just breeze through these next things until I run out of time. But one example here, like you install a Drupal site, you log in, and this is what you get. It's not a lot of care here.
Ain't much care there.
Here's another example of something that wouldn't be too hard. These could be release notes that pull in automatically from the Drupal project. If we have it also be able to pull in, if we structure our custom modules in a way that could have release notes in them, or like a change log, it could automatically pull in stuff from there, so you can kind of build in every time you add something new. So maybe you have a feature where you've added a new content type, and you have a little text about, hey, new thing, put this in the feature module, it deploys, it becomes part of this like release notes, what's new, you just logged in, welcome. Here's an example. We add a new content type, link, take the tour. So we're not too far away. We just have to want to do it. We can build this kind of stuff into what comes out of Drupal out of the box to say, hey, here's what's new, take a tour. Tour's already there. Here's that idea I was talking about with the basic page, right? So let's say the outcome of our efforts is this basic page, help for a basic page. And here's an example of the current state of help text for a field. In this example, the field would be short description. You can add some help text there. If we customize this experience to have the option of adding some longer form content, that could be something, this whole aspect of like short description, well, you're adding the thing, you know everything about it, you're the one that's adding it, let's just add or paste in whatever might be helpful. Maybe the product owner is already got it written somewhere in one of their docs, that can feed right into the help page. Let's say you could edit this help page, and really what's happening is it knows what content type it's for. So things like the title and the subtitle go there, can be edited, but it's pulling in everything automatically from the content type it's related to. Just ideas, hopefully, you know, people come up with better ones, but not crazy to think about. Once you get to this point, if this is the right way to go with things, you can have a different display, right? So you've got the same structured information, and you've got, you know, key components down there, and you've got an image of what the page is going to look like. And since it knows what content type it's coming from, it can pull in all this other information. Mass.gov ended up implementing this on the left here horizontally. You might recognize some of this idea. But in these slides, I liked it vertically for whatever reason, because you get your out-of-the-box node add page, but you can do something like this instead. And on the mass.gov example, these are all horizontal. But this is that same kind of thing that you can, you know, have being generated automatically if all the pieces are in place in the first place.
It's really nice.
If those help pages are content, then you don't have to mess with this this help experience. You can have right. This is the help experience as we know it. But if we get into an abstraction layer where our help is actually content, we can use all the powers of Drupal, and we can have a help center that's searchable. We can have blocks with what the tours are. We can categorize our help topics and have them show up below. This is the kind of experience that customers are used to when they have a product that I think is lacking in Drupal and is present in a lot of ways in WordPress. So this is kind of a place where they're understanding their users better and making more decisions for their users. And that's their core philosophy, part of it, decisions instead of options. Whereas we give a lot of options, and I think a lot of customers feel left hanging. And of course, you always want to gather that feedback at the bottom of the pages. So it's all part of building a culture of closeness and open collaboration with our customers to get a better product. And that's because developing a software product is complex yet flexible, and this means that the closer we are to the operators of our product as developers of the product, the shorter our feedback loops are, and the better the product will become because we're staying on the right course as much as possible. So when change is easy, as it is with software development, you may have the code right up in front of you when you find out a change would be beneficial. The awareness of that is what fuels improvement. It's hard not to do the right thing when you see the right thing to do right in front of you. So we need everyone's perspective to make our product as intuitive as possible. We need our products to be accessible. We need to bring our customers and the operation, we need to bring all the teams together to put feedback into our products, and this is all part of that. So start your courageous journey of openness and collaboration to share and to focus on your commitments to continuously improve your product. And if you do that and your customers aren't that close to you, they'll get closer and your product will improve. Thank you. All right, I don't know if there's questions or what.
No, it looks nice.
How do you find some of those users that care?
Well, it's
I need some of those.
the people building it that care.
That's the users we're talking about. Those-
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I think our Drupal community is ripe right now for these improvements. So we just have to encourage it and try to steer the community to. Because like right now, I saw Dries give a keynote at Design for Drupal, and he was talking about some of the efforts that are going on to make the back-end experience more enjoyable. And he said that their
Yeah.
next priority is to make the login page nicer to look at. And I don't know a single customer of mine that cares what
About the login page.
what PHP errors on their site. So,
If you look at, I like what, I don't know if you had it or tried it, Backdrop.
yeah, yeah.
I really love the admin they have.
That you can search. You can like search the admin menu navigation and then highlight where.
And everything, the stuff that comes out of the box is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that Backdrop's a great example of they.
And it's just Drupal 7, just upgrade it, you know?
They had a sense of their customers, and their sense didn't match with where they saw Drupal going, so
Yeah.
they made the decision.
We're stuck on Drupal 7, but really.